Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for taking the time today to be a part of this conversation with two of the world's premier experts on L-ISA. We are really lucky today to have Dave Dixon join us. Dave, you're calling from where? Sorry, you're Skyping in from where, Dave?
I'm from the UK in an area called Cornwall, sunny Cornwall.
So it does look quite. It looks quite sunny there. This is quite remarkable. You're not allowed to go out and do shows, and it's a beautiful day, of course. So, with any luck, we'll be back to doing shows in October, November in the UK. So that will be when it's raining a lot and cold. So that just feels perfectly correct and normal. Max, thanks for joining us as well. You're coming from the south of France, correct?
Yes. I'm glad to join you on this webinar. Yes, I'm in south of France, in my family home, locked down like everyone.
Good. Well, Dave and Max, Dave, front of house engineer for Mark Knopfler for some time now, and Max, this was your first tour with Mark, correct?
Yes, it was the first tour for me with Mark Knopfler and with Dave Dixon. Yes, right.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today, obviously, is the tour from 2019. You guys did quite a lot of shows around the world with L-ISA. I think the two of you might be the most experienced front of house engineer and systems engineer in the world on L-ISA, as we've done a lot of different shows, but not often have we done 70 or 80 or 90 of the same thing. So I'm really looking forward to what your knowledge is on this topic and the experience you guys have gathered and of course the things you've learned. And Max, I think you've put together a bit of a presentation for us. So I'm going to kick it off to you, Max, and we can jump back into some questions in a minute.
Yeah. Okay, to begin this presentation, let me introduce you the team, because it was a teamwork on this tour. And now everyone know Dave Dixon, but we had Pete Hughes as crew boss on this tour, and two PA men for the Europe tour, Bob Bollander and Guillaume Richard. We had two other PMN to do the US tour, Austin Rivers and Alex Guerinchot. And we had two other people to do Madison Square Garden and Red Rocks, because you know these two venues are a little bit tricky for the load in and load out. These two people was Nicolas Denoncourt and Etienne Lapré. Big hello to John Ashton. He did the rigging on this tour and he made a great job, and that was really appreciated for me because to deploy an L-ISA systems, we need to be very precise for the rigging. Monitor World, Gavin Tampani and Ben Byford. The production was Jolie and Kevin Upgood. That was the team on tour. And we had other people to do the rehearsal and the pre-production time. From SSC we had Ulf, Miles and Holger Schader. They did all the stuff to organize everything, to prepare everything, to make sure everything can be deployed on tour. And they did a really great job. It was very comfortable to us to work after all the tour. From L-Acoustics, little support from Sergey and from Sylvain Biguet. As we can see on the bottom right, a great picture of us. Now everyone knows Sergey. He did great webinars last week and 2 weeks ago. And Sergey is a great help to be in a tour. Yes. It was very cool to have Sergey and Sylvain. Just the period. We had 2 parts of the tour. The first part was the European tour, and the second part was the US tour. It was 2 different type of deployment. We will see these 2 deployments after. First part in Europe was 23 April to 22 July. It was 4 months tour. We did almost 55 L-ISA shows with a focus deployment. We did a couple of festivals with left and right, but all the arena was did with L-ISA. everything was did with L-ISA for the production show. The US tour, 16 August to 25 September, 20 show with L-ISA, two different deployments. The first one, a focus deployment, and the second one was a wide deployment. Why we have a wide deployment on this tour? Because we did many theaters, and that was the most tricky part of this part of the tour, because the first concern was to make a totally compatible deployment, focus and wide, to do theaters and arena during this part of the tour. And we have took many time to think about how we can make these two deployment compatible, full compatible, in terms of truck space, in terms of rigging, in terms of a lot of things. And it was a great challenge for everyone.
And just a reminder, Max, just a reminder to everyone out there. So L-ISA Focus is a specific design for, let's say, pop or music that requires significant low end resources, anything that isn't probably orchestral type music. And wide is typically deployed for things that need less low end. However, we sometimes in a theater situation use a wide PA design primarily because of weight constraints, rigging constraints, box constraints. And it's just really a motivation of whether the PA hangs and L-ISA incorporate significant LF in them. So that's a K2 or a K1 versus, say, a Cara or something else. Is that kind of does that feel right to you as well?
Yes, it's correct. But here it was most a way to how we can deploy in theaters, because in theaters we don't have enough rigging capacities to deploy the focus, you know. Sure. And the wide deployment was totally perfect to deploy in theaters. Sure. And I will show you after a little picture of the wide deployment during.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Okay, cool. And I think so. The question I have is, how did we get started on this? Right, like Max, to you, when was the very first time you ever heard L-ISA? Was it on Mark Knopfler, or did you hear it at L-Acoustics or at another show?
No, it was at Marcus's in L-Acoustics. It was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, at the beginning of the project. And my first show was 3 years ago with Fred Bailly, an application L-Acoustics. And we did Ennio Morricone in Milan, a classical show with wide deployment. And yes, it was 3 years ago or something like that, with Agora, a rental company called Agora.
And Dave, when was the first time you heard L-ISA? Was it at a show, or was it in the factory? Was it at a demo at L-Acoustics?
No, it was actually in Paris. I knew nothing about. I didn't actually know anything about L-ISA as it is. My good friend Dave Brooks, very kindly, for 3 or 4 years, he very kindly was inviting me out to Paris to listen to this thing called L-ISA. And I was either busy on tour or I'd just finished tour and I didn't want to go away again. And he, fair play to Dave, he kept very kindly inviting me, and eventually I got to a point in 2018, and he invited me early, sort of January, February, and I couldn't make it, so I was on tour, and then he invited me again sort of May time, and I thought, yeah, let's go and see what this is all about. He had sent me through paperwork and I saw the front cover, and it was just a little speaker on a stop, and I thought, well, so I didn't actually really, still travelling on to Paris, I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know anything about it, and we both sat down, and Dave started the introduction of the system, talking about Grateful Dead and their system and blah, blah, blah. And within 5 minutes, I just said, right, I'm sold. I love the concept. Let's go and have lunch. That was it, you know. It was the actual concept that grabbed me instantly. I knew, you know, the K2 family of Bobs sound great, so that wasn't an issue, you know. And the concept is something that I actually wanted and just thought amazing, because the way I've mixed Mark in arenas, well, I mix anybody in arenas, is quite mono, really, because people can't hear. Obviously, if you're panning things, people can't hear it. And on the previous Knopfler tour in 2015, we was doing a sound check early on in the tour, and Mark asked me to pan a guitar over to one side, and I very naively got on the microphone and said, "I can't do that, Mark, because half the audience won't hear it." And well, it went very quiet, let's say, and
that's always the best response from the artist on stage, is when they don't like your answer and you're forced to tell them the truth, right? So
yeah, and I was in a little strange frame of mind, and I just sort of spoke, you know, less diplomatically than what I should have. But anyway, he just sort of graphed, well, do what you can. But from that day, I knew Mark doesn't forget things, and I knew from that day that this would be brought back up again. So as soon as Dave mentioned this concept of L-ISA, I just went, yes, love it. That's what I am absolutely after, 100%. You know.
Now, the conversation at that show with Panning and Mark on stage, did you have that before you ever heard of L-ISA, or did you have that after? What was that, a year or two before that you had that conversation, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now there's something I can do?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. I spent, well, from 2015 tour up to when it was announced he was going to go back out on tour, wondering A, if I was going to get the job back, and B, how to approach it, knowing full well that Mark would bring this subject up again, you know. So Dave and L-Acoustics basically sort of gave me a bit of a lifeline, to be honest. You know, but yeah, no, but as I say, it was purely the instant concept that Dave Brooks mentioned. It just grabbed me and loved it, you know. And the rest of the day, yeah, just had a great day looking around the factory and eating lunch. It was great.
And that concept, obviously, for those who haven't had Dave Brooks tell it to you, is this really simple thing that in a large arena show, we all know that most people don't hear a really good stereo A, and half the people don't even get to hear stereo B. So we're really forced to mix within, what, 10 or 20% of our pan range is about the most we can get away with, and we can only really hard pan something that is not important, right? Like a reverb effect or a stereo keyboard patch, you can pan that, yeah. But the lead guitar and lead vocal and all that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah. Sorry. So basically, if in an arena, the ultimate place to listen to the show is, you know, left-right situation is at the desk, and a few rows in front, a few rows behind, and once you get off there, you're then into realms of, you know, something that you just can't fix, basically. Yeah,
the joke I always say is like, when I buy my mother tickets to come to the show, I buy them in front of house, and when I buy my mother-in-law tickets to the show, I put her in the corner in the back of the arena. Right. So, you know, it's who you care about, right? You put them in the right spot.
Yeah, well, you know, that's something that's always I've always been concerned about, and hence me always mixing very, not totally mono, but, you know, very, very narrow, and because Mark's such a big band with a lot of wacky string instruments, it made my job a lot harder, but I knew doing what I was doing on a left-right PA, more of the audience was getting to appreciate what was actually being played, you know. So going on to finally getting on to using L-ISA, the actual mix which I ended up producing wasn't any different. It was just a bit easier for me, but a majority of the audience in an arena could actually hear that mix.
That's cool. That's really neat. That's really neat. So, Max, like, I think you had some details on the overall design of the system, which obviously then supports what we're, what Dave is able to mix into. And was there, you know, what's the start of that concept? Was it a fully immersive speaker system all the way around, or was it just a funnel system? What did you guys actually take on tour with you?
No, we had just a frontal system with one extension systems, but let me introduce with some slide if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can have a look to the design. In Europe, we had frontal systems with 55 K2 and 48 Cara as a scene 1 and 5. All the scene system was made with Cara and K2, is a typical focus deployment, with one extension left and right with 36 Cara, 18 Cara per hang, one hang of 9 KS 28 just behind the central hang, and 24 K2 to do the outfield systems, and a couple of arcs WIFO and Cara to do the front field.
So just to clarify, and these are major arenas in Europe. This is Bercy and Mercedes, yep, and O2, and you had 9 double-18 subs, and that's it.
Yes, that's it. We try to optimize everything, and the level 2, and I reduced the quantity of subs as the maximum possible to enjoy the impulse of the subs maximum as possible, and to have enough directivity to send the sound far as possible. And finally, we did all the show with 9 KS28.
Wow. Right. Now, Dave, I'm assuming Mark Knopfler is a guitar player, and every guitar player I've ever worked for in my entire life despises anything below about 65 hertz. So is this also true?
Absolutely. I like low end as opposed to sub.
Got it.
I don't like the bass drum to be a natural sounding bass drum, not just a mass of frequencies that, you know, no tone, you know, just moving air side. So the low end of the system to me is exceptionally important. Not the quantity of it, just the quality of it, and yeah, very, very important. And the way you guys have made this L-ISA system work, and you can steer that LF area away from, and it works superbly. I mean, Mark was just blown away, absolutely blown.
Well, you know, when I try to explain this to people, you know, there's I say it as sound design, and Max and Dave maybe will agree with me. There's an original sin of sound design, which is we mix in mono, and then we have left and right, and sub, or maybe we're really good and we have left and right and sub, and they're all producing similar low end content. You know, even if they're crossed over perfectly, they still have time information, they still have all this stuff, and that original sin of sound design is it's coming from 3 or 4 places. And I like to think of it as when I was a kid, me and my friends jumped into the pool at my parents' house and made waves. And if we jumped in 4 different corners of the pool, we made some waves. But when all 4 of us jumped off that diving board at one time holding hands, we knocked the water out of the pool, right? Same amount of kids jumping in the pool. And with L-ISA here, you have your 3 main arrays. You call these scene 2, 3, and 4 max. And we can't even see it because the subs are perfectly tucked in behind. But the subs are right behind there. And so now all 4 of our friends jumped in the pool at the same time in the same place. And boy, does that feel different, doesn't it? Like it's an amazing difference when the time information is perfect at pretty much every single seat in the house with all of that low end, and all of a sudden you don't have to be 10 dB louder to feel the low end. It just hits you like in a new way, and it's really cool to see that. Boy, a show with only 9 sub and 55 K2 is quite a lot, so that's nothing to laugh about. But it's not an absurd amount of PA by any stretch of the imagination. That's really neat.
Yes,
and so, right. And it was each one of the scene caras. Is that was it 18 each? Is that what you ended up with? Or did you carry 24?
Here it was Bercy, Paris Accor, and Hotel Arena, and it was 16, I think. It's not the maximum load. It was the maximum load was in O2 Arena, because I think it was the biggest venue we did on this tour. Bercy was not the biggest one, and it was almost 80% or 90% of the maximum load of the PA here. We can see.
And if I look, scene 1 and scene 5 on this picture are about where you would normally have your left and right in a stereo system, right, Dave?
Yes, almost.
Yeah. Oh, very neat. And then the outfills there are covering on the sides where obviously the PA is a bit challenged because of how wide the seating was. Did you guys seat at 180, or did you go a little bit beyond that when they were selling well?
We was lucky on this because we can try to put the outfield systems at many places, and I try many position, and I've changed all the outfield position to I adapt all the outfield position to the venue, and that was we was very lucky to try this on this tour, because the John Ashton was very flexible with us, the riggers, and the deployment was possible like this. And we tried many positions to the outfield, but we can see this after I have a case study for you around the outfield systems.
Got it. Cool. Well, that's really neat. That looks really good. What was I look at this, Dave, when did this process of, hey, Mark, in production and management, I have an idea that might solve our problems, but by the way, I'm going to put it in front of all the lights. How did that go? How did that go over? I mean, is your artist audio-centric? That helps, obviously.
Yeah, I am in a very blessed position with Mark, because though the show has got to look good, the prime factor is the audio. There is no video. He doesn't want video. But the lights of, it's got to look good, and but as I say, the primary concern is, from his point of view, is the audio. So when I broached the production team and management team, I said, look, I'm going to ask for this PA to be used, and they just went fine, and which made me laugh. I said, no, you really need to get your head into this and look into it, because it's going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect crew numbers, local crew numbers, trucking space. It's going to affect a lot of things. And they went, ooh. So they went away and sort of went, okay, approached the audio budget, which was increased.
Sure. And then we got the LD on board, Mark Henderson, but he was told, you've got to wait until we get the rigging for the PA plotted before you can do the design. So, as I say, I'm quite blessed working with Mark, because that's the procedure, how it went. Until they was given the rigging plot for the PA, the lighting department didn't design the PA. They didn't design their lighting rig, so they designed it. Yeah, that seems like a really great thing, because usually audio is given a black box, at 10 meters off center, and said, Dave, congratulations, pick whatever speaker you want, it goes here, right? And the lighting guy sends a plot over where your speakers go, versus now we're sending a plot to the lighting guy saying, here's where we're going to put speakers. Is that okay? You know, which is it's really great to see that conversation happening, and obviously that motivation from the artist and production and everyone involved. Wow, that's really great. Well, how was this? Oh, go ahead.
No, after you.
I was just, you know, obviously that's great to have other departments work with you. I mean, obviously they were told to. Was their reaction positive as well, though? Were they all for improving the quality of the show? Was that exciting to them?
Yeah. No, it's a well-known thing with Mark. Is, you know, the audio's, you know, sort of takes a prime spot basically. So they didn't really sort of, the line department didn't bat an eyelid really. They just went, yeah, okay. You know, there's no sort of conversation about it. It's, you know, but I don't know if you noticed in this picture. I mean, the guy is a genius. He did his design with these vertical strips of lights, and when the L-ISA system was lower, it just worked with the L-ISA system. So, you know,
that's cool. Yeah,
oh no, he was good. It just worked really well, you know.
I definitely think we're going to experience this next innovation in our industry when lighting designers leverage, you know, the restrictions that we're asking them to take and come up with some really unique looks that work with the challenges. You know, no different than audio working with the challenges of downstage lighting truss and so on and so forth. I think we're going to see some really interesting things of that and integrating visual looks that enhance the idea that you're being immersed in things. So it's really cool to see that. That's really impressive. You know, Max, this doesn't seem like ultimately that much PA for an O2 size venue. I mean, I look at this going, if I would have been to the O2, I would have been in with 16 aside K1, and you have 3 times what, 16 or 18 K2. That's, you know, more or less the same amount of power, I think, if I'm correct.
Yes, it was almost the same, but the main way was to optimize the coverage, and all the time I adapt the main angles to the coverage, and that was the way to adapt to the coverage for first, and after check the SPL. But we have enough headroom with all the systems to do Bercy O2 Arena, and it was not a problem. I was not worried about the headroom, not at all.
Good.
Not on this show, and the show was at almost 97 dBs. It was totally comfortable to do with this setup. It was very large.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, Knopfler's not a, well, I can't say it's not a loud show. There are loud moments. It's a dynamic show, you know. So it's not just start at this level and flatline to there until he walks off the stage. You know, there's a lot of dynamics to his show. So the coverage is you know, if I didn't have the headroom, I would work with it. It's the coverage is a lot more important to me than the amount of power.
Got it. So let's see what's next on this, Max. This journey. I'm curious to see what your.
That was the biggest, almost the biggest deployment for the Europes. But as I said to you, we had 2 parts of the tour, and the second part was the US tour. And we did 2 different deployments, the focus with K2 and the wide deployment only for theaters with a wide Cara. We decided with Dave to don't use extension for the theaters, and just to refocus the image on stage with the wide deployment, make the deployment easy and possible every day to all the theaters without extension. And sometimes, if it's possible, without outfill, we just put the outfill and turn inside to do some extension systems. That was the way of the theater deployment, but it was working pretty well. We did 2 venues with extension with ARCS WIFO, and it was pretty cool. Yes, really. And after the biggest deployment was Madison Square Garden. This venue. Maybe some of you know this venue is a big arena with a beautiful scoreboard on top, and for this reason we had 3 carat down K2 because the PA was lower, and to adapt SPL at the venue we had some carat down K2, and we did MSG with almost 12 K2 and 3 carat down for the scene system.
Yeah, MSG is an amazing. It's such an amazing place to play because you're in New York City and the energy's great. But when you do that show at Madison Square Garden, you just don't look forward to getting in and out because it's on top of a train station in the middle of Manhattan, and everything is just the crew is fantastic and they do a great job, but it's just not easy. And then you're going to I think the most difficult venue in the world to load into. And for those of you who are not from the United States or haven't toured the United States, Red Rocks is an iconic venue, but I believe you unload the trucks about 500 meters down the mountain and have to transfer everything to another truck that's smaller that drives up the rest of the mountain to the back of the venue. And the worst thing is you wake up in the morning there and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. And you look there and all these people are working out and they're all fit and they're all from Denver. And they're running up and down the steps, and you're like, I'm going to do that too. And you make it about halfway, and I think you pretty much pass out because you forget that you're at, 2,200 meters high, I think? Something like that, Max?
Yes, but after the loading, you don't need to run inside the venue. You are totally wet. It's not a problem. You don't need to do sport on this venue. The loading is enough.
Yeah, exactly. Your sport is done for a good 3 days after a load-in at Red Rocks.
Yes, right. But it was almost like that, as we can see here, Red Rocks with the focus deployment, and one wide deployment in Portland. As we can see here, it's a small theater, and that makes our life not really easy to have a totally compatible system. But SSC provides all the solution to do all the venue perfectly with L-ISA, and the only venue we hadn't used L-ISA was a venue with a contract to use a house PA. In US we have many venue, and it's impossible to deploy your PA, and you need to use the house PA, and that was the only venue we haven't deployed the wide deployment.
Now, was it the same kit that you guys toured with, or were you, or was there a truck of a K2 kit and a truck for a Cara kit, the wide and the focus, or were you just utilizing the Cara that were in the kit for the wide?
No, the K2 was at the back, on the first row of the truck, and the wide deployment at the back of the truck, and it was more theaters deployment than focus deployment. And because it was totally compatible, Cara, Hamps, we can see here we use ARCS WIFO as outfill on Red Rocks, sure. And sometimes we use this outfill during the theaters deployment. But it was totally compatible, and after it was just a great job from P2Gs to organize all the stuff in the truck, and we had one truck for the speakers, one truck for the backline and the staff house and front of house stuff, and some rigging stuff inside the rigging truck, like the amps or amps rack or some motors, 2Ks, and some stuff like that inside the rigging truck.
And Max, someone was just asking on the Q&A, and I think it's perfect to see this back and forth. The main motivation for Cara in the theater was both weight and coverage versus having the K2, right? So it was 10 Cara got you the coverage you needed and weighed the least compared to having to use 10 K2 to do the same thing.
Yes, on one truss, the only way was to deploy wide. And with 10 cara per hang, we can cover all the theaters in US. I think sometimes it was a little bit tricky because you have a balcony and you need to shoot under and on top. But the production was very cool with us, and because it's the Mark's way to have the better sound as possible, and the Dave ways to have better sound inside the venue. Sometimes the PA was really low to shoot under the balcony and on top of the balcony, but you can deploy a wide deployment on many venues in US. Yes, totally.
And Dave, I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing a PA really close to my lead artist and other things on stage. How was that for them? What was their experience as musicians and performers? Was it different than they're used to? Was it better? Was it worse?
Okay, well, before I answer that, the person who asked the question about the choice of speakers in the theatres, I'd just point out that one hang of that scene of caras. So if you look at the centre one, that's just Mark's vocal and Mark's guitar in that centre one. If you had K2, you just wouldn't have used it. There's so much power in that one hang of cara that I went nowhere near the maximum limit of it. So irrelevant of weight issues or anything else, that was more than
enough.
PA theatre, more than enough in a theatre.
Yeah, I think it's great to point out, because if you had been on a tour and not carrying PA in a theater this size, and you walked in and saw 10 or 12 cara left, right, you would be very happy, right? You know, oh, there's 12 cara side in a 1,500 seat theater. That's plenty of power for everything but an EDM show or something, right? And now you have 5 times 10. I mean, you have 50 cara in a theater that you would have put 20 or 30 in normally, right? So that's quite a bit of power, especially, and this is a hard thing to remember, I think, for people, is we're taking all these mono objects, right? So your guitar and your vocal, and we're putting them in one speaker. And so as soon as we do that, we actually gain some efficiency versus when we put it in left and right. And when we put it in left and right, we get incoherent adding, so we get non-coupling, right? And so we actually lose efficiency in that trade. So it's actually even more powerful than the equal number of speakers in left and right for those mono objects, which is really cool. So yeah, it's a great point to make. My concern always is, I've worked with a number of, let's say, excitable guitar players. I think that's a good way to put it. Ones who went on half-hour conversations during soundcheck about the vibration on stage or about the reverberation of the room. When they were this close to the speakers, did that change their performance?
Yeah, no. So Mark, from day one, with what he would call our PA, he loved this PA. He'd come in and he'd say, "Oh, we're using our PA today. It's great, isn't it?" He was just totally blown away by it. He was from day one totally comfortable with the onstage volume and bass sound that he was getting, which was absolutely superb. Irrelevant of the height or the venue, proximity. So in Europe, we would generally do whatever it is, 3 months of arenas, and then the last month would be outdoor festival sites. And some of those sites we had to use the local PAs in a left-right position. And I sort of said very early on, because Mark would generally get to a point early on in the tour and just sort of say over the microphone, "Sound checks are for girls, see you, Dave," and that would be my last sound check for the rest of the tour. But on this, I said to him very early on, I said, "Look, when we do our first couple of festival shows with local PAs, I really need you to come in to do sound checks, just to feel the difference that it's going to affect to you." And unfortunately, he did. Well, actually, he did a sound check for every show, which was very odd for him. And he wasn't happy the local Yeah, there was times Max had to go down onto the stage with his iPad and change parameters purely just to try and ease the bass end for Mark, from the left. But it's something that he's had to deal with for years up until this point, So the L-ISA PA was just a breath of fresh air for him, well, for everybody, but it was a definite night and day difference going to a left and right system. But he dealt with it, and we made it as good as we could get for him. And most of the time he was happy. There was the odd one where he'd say the next day, yeah, it was a bit tough, but is it RPA today?
Maybe this is similar, but what I've experienced both with L-ISA and in and out of it with different artists is the response of the sound system on stage is much more consistent with L-ISA than it is with a left-right system, right? So yes. There's a certain envelope that the artist and the band feels on stage, and it's pretty consistent show to show, day to day, venue to venue with L-ISA, versus a left-right. It's much more dynamic based on the room acoustics, based on the position of the PA, based on all these things. And all of a sudden you can settle into a routine, and that makes it a lot easier, is what I've experienced. And it sounds like that's kind of the same thing in this situation, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely concur with that. It just makes everybody's life a lot. The bands, the band, the monitor guys, just makes everybody's life a lot easier. It's which is super, absolutely super. Yeah, but a big comment from the band very early on in the tour was they actually, it's an odd one, but they were saying that they could see the reaction of the crowd just totally different to all the other tours that's happened. They knew something was being pretty magical out there. Just the crowd reaction, which was
the band advertising this, or were they telling people that something was different? Was it like an active effort, or was it just people there going something's different and realizing it themselves?
I don't think anybody sort of did any publicity over it. It was, well, other than obviously L-Acoustics.
Sure.
It was great because the band was feeling the effect of what was going on, which was just great. It was really good.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yes.
And Max, you had obviously the U.S. tour, those challenges. I think, what's the next thing on the agenda here?
Yes. Maybe we can have a little check about all the rigging optimization and all the signal flow optimization during this tour, because SSE provide a real good method to deploy the systems, and I want to introduce you this to tell you this method. That is the rigging deployment, the rigging method during this tour. As we can see here, we had 2 trusses in the front downstage. Okay. In the front of stage, downstage. The first one was the truss left, okay, to rig scene 1 and 2, the first hang of Cara and the first hang of K2. The second one was the second part of the scene system. We had the scene 3, 4, and 5 rig under this truss. We had just 2 rigging points to deploy the subs. Okay. Yep. 3 rigging points to deploy the extension system. Sometimes it was with delta plate, and sometimes it was without, depending on the rigging capacities. It was just to make our life easier to adjust the azimuth depending on the venue.
I always find on every tour it's far easier to just ask the riggers to pull an extra point than it is to have them hit a bridle perfectly every single day, right? It's just easier to put those 2 motors on the delta plate, as opposed to say, oh, that bridle's off by 3 inches, we need to, or 10 centimeters, pardon me. we need to move it. You might as well just pull the extra point. They'll spend less time doing that in most arena applications, for sure.
When the rigging was really easy with 2 dead hangs, we killed the delta plate and we put just 2 dead hangs. But when the rigging was not comfortable, it's easier for us and easier for the players to deploy 1 more pickup per side. It was almost the same configuration for the outfield systems. And here it was a Madison Square Garden, delta plate. These 2 rigging point was the amps rack, because SSE provide a beautiful solution from Ulf, amps rack, flying amps rack. I will introduce you just after. And we can see here 2 cable truss to put the cable on top, just to provide the power and the signal to the amp rack.
It's interesting looking at this. I only count maybe an extra. Sorry, Max. I was just saying I only count maybe an extra 4 or 6 points over what would be a traditional left-right system in an arena show, because traditionally you'd have flown main, flown sub. That's usually between 5 and 6 points right there, and then you have out hangs the same. So the only thing you really seem to add was that extra extension hang was the only thing that's really the extra points compared to a traditional PA.
Scott, I don't know if Scott,
sorry, we cannot hear you.
I don't know if it's just me, but keep losing your audio again, Mike.
Oh, no. Well, I'll ask that question again, and we'll see if this audio.
Are you the same?
Let's see. On my end. Okay. Did I lose my network connection again? Technology's grand when it works, right, guys? Can you hear me now? No. Uh-oh.
Okay. That's okay for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Max.
Okay, cool. Next, we had SSE Solotech plate. It was a plate to adjust the azimuth on every hang of the scene systems. It was just a plate rig on top of the truss, and we rig the bottom, the K2 bumper under this plate, and we can adjust the azimuth 1 degree per degrees during all the loading.
So Max, if I can just say, if you can imagine, if the people can imagine like a cogwheel underneath this plate, you can lift the center part up and just move it 1 degree at a time and lock it in.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Dave. Yes, right. Yes, when the angle is locked after, you can rig the PA under this plate, right?
So I don't know if you guys can hear me
A second optimization was the Cara cars to deploy faster as possible the Cara inside the theaters in US. Because in Europe we had Cara per 3 inside some boxes, and maybe in theaters we don't have enough place to have many boxes, and that was our request with Pete to have a faster loading. We had some dollies, and on top of these dollies we have Cara plus the bumpers, and we can leave the bumpers and going in the truck like this without removing the bumpers on top. That was a great step for us to deploy L-ISA faster every day. One of the main optimization was this beautiful amps rack. This amps rack was made by Ulf. We had inside HF motor controllers and Luminex switches, and this method reduced the cable lengths, and it was really easier for us to deploy L-ISA every day because the cable length was short, and it was just 2 rigging points, and for sure, if the cable length is shorter, the loading is faster, and the sound is better. That was a great innovation from SSE. It's almost the same amstrac as you've seen with Nick Payne on Rammstein tour, but we had 2 platforms per side of this amstrac to walk and to check if everything is okay when your amstrac is flying.
Max,
a little method to have a better deployment. Every day we draw floor everything, all the azimuth, all the most important things on floor. We draw all the orientation of each systems just to confirm and to check if everything is perfect before flying the PA. The second was, that is just an example, but we can see here a paper plot. It's just a paper plot with all the angle sheet day per day, because we know every day we change the angle, and to make our life easier, we made this kind of odd stuff just to have an easier life every day and to load the PA faster. I don't know if Scott is.
So I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me now?
With us, yes.
Hey, all right. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Apparently, us audio guys have difficulty with audio from time to time. So sorry about that, guys.
You too.
Yeah, I mean, listen. If audio was a profession, oh wait, never mind. Okay, so. Very cool. That was, I think it was really neat, Max, to see the rigging implementation. I know one of the scary things about going from 2 arrays in left and right to all these speakers is oh my gosh, we'll never be able to do this. And the way I think of it is there's this whole world of professionals, production managers, tour riggers, production companies that have built their careers on solving problems of undeployable things, right? Dave, Max is a bit younger, so we're gonna have to talk without him. Do you remember when lighting rigs were, 600 par cans and hundreds of feet of truss, and
yes.
Yeah, and now you go there and 600 par cans seems easy to deploy. It was just a bunch of trusses, and now they have everything moving and flying. And if I don't go to a pop show with a rigging plot for lighting of 50 or 60 or 70 points, it seems downright small. So I think that we have a great group of people obviously at SSE, at Solitech and companies like that around the world that are finding unique solutions to challenges like that azimuth plate. It's a great idea. I mean, and now five motors pick up 5 arrays.
Sorry, your compatriot Ulf Olek did a lot of groundwork preceding the tour. I spent a lot of time talking to SSE, getting this all designed and just, optimized as best as it could be before we actually set off on tour. And then as we set off, little things were learned and little things were changed, and it just kept getting optimized better and better.
Yeah, and that's the great sign of both a great crew, a great production, and a great product is that you find improvements and you want to do them, right? There's so much improvement in L-ISA that maybe flying amp racks isn't that big of a deal, because hey, maybe I lose a little performance in my cable, but I've gained so much real estate, and yet you guys are doing that as well, and that's really great to see. That's really neat. Maxine, you guys had an AVB network running as well, correct? Everything was AVB to the amplifiers?
Yes, it was not a full AVB at the beginning, but we start the tour with this configuration. That was the first configuration. It was an insert mode. The processor was insert inside the desk, but as we can see here, we have maybe too much conversion, and Dave wants to improve the sound every day, and for this reason, we switch to this configuration to have less conversion and to have a better sound. This configuration is just a daisy chain configuration with this sound card, the RME 32 Pro AVB, and with this configuration, we kill 2 conversion. Before we had 1 conversion here, optocore to MADI, MADI to optocore, the optocore to AES, AES to AVB, okay, as we can see here. But with the second configuration, the second signal flow, we had just optocore to MADI and MADI to AVB direct input to the LA12X, and that was a step to improve the sound. For me, the low end was more precise. We had more 3D maybe. I don't know if it makes sense, but everything was wider. The Vox was more stable. Maybe Dave, you want to jump on this?
Sure. Yeah. No, so we was going along, and I was always asking Max to move the slope down each day, just to sort of because the low mid area wasn't cloudy or anything. It was just a bit too much. And eventually Max said, "I've got this unit. Let's try it." I will, and I'm happy. I'm more than happy to try anything. And I said, right, well, can we A/B the two systems? And Max, yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a quick A/B, was it, Max? So it was a little bit difficult. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, this is going to, by the time it gets, B comes in, you're going to forget what the A sound was. But it was a bit mind blowing, really. I just said, yeah, that's, it's a lot cleaner. It's a lot tighter, as Max said, in the low end. Let's keep it. And Max said, well, what's the difference? And Max explained all the different conversions which was going on, and I just went, yeah, brilliant. It was just another step, just a little notch, making things better each day. But that was actually quite a big one, to be fair. It makes
perfect sense. And you still had a fully redundant system, obviously, between 2 drive paths, between 2 L-ISA processors, between 2 SD7 engines. So if anything happened during the show, it was a quick recovery, if not automatic.
Yeah. Yes, SSE provide all the solution to have a perfect fallback and to have all redundant during this tour. Yes, full safety. That was one of the priority for sure.
Yeah, especially with flown amp racks, that obviously always makes people a slight bit nervous, and especially these days we're starting to rely on that little plastic connector for all of our data and audio and everything else. So it's nice to have something in case power fails, in case anything. So that's really great to see.
Cool. Up, we can have a look of the control rack. We use just LR Network Manager and P1. We haven't some lake or some stuff like that. For me, on my way, if the signal flow is easier, less machine, the configuration is easier, the sound is better. That is the way. And we can see here we had just P1 direct in AVB in the amps and finish. The 2 P1 on top did all the synth system and the subs as monomix, and the P1 in front of house did some mix down for the festival and for the TV when we had some TV.
Got it.
Always you have a guy 5 minutes before the show. Can I have some song? But yes, we can. Was the configuration.
You use that P1 as a distribution amp, which is probably the most expensive press feed in the world. I appreciate that, though, Max.
Yeah,
That's the highest quality press feed you could give the guy, and then of course he'll probably set his preamp wrong and just overload the whole signal. So, but
right.
that's great. That's fantastic. Not a very complex setup, obviously. One of the nice things with L-ISA is many of the arrays are similar. So for those of you who use auto filter, which is the algorithm within Soundvision, it's one set of filters for the 3K2 arrays, one set of filters for the Cara scene,
Yes.
and one set of filters. So it's quite easy to do. This is where everyone's going to get a good laugh, Max. For those of you, let me introduce Max. This is Maxime is the world's foremost system calibrator. I don't know anyone, including any manufacturer, who has as many microphones as you. So if you think you've got a really cool kit for calibrating PAs, let's drop the picture on them. I guess there it is.
That was my way to tune the PA with a multi input microphone. We made this measurement station with my business partner Vladimir, and the way is to have an average of all the speakers inside the venue, because maybe, as you know, we have more issue come from the measure than come from the PA when we have just one microphone position. And if you duplicate the quantity of microphone, you reduce the issue come from the measurement. And that was the way to this station. But the first optimization was made inside the Soundvision. I think 80% of the jobs was made inside the Soundvision. All the FIR filters and the first EQ was made inside the Soundvision, and after, in reality, almost, yes, 90% of what I did inside the Soundvision was right in the reality. After all the Soundvision EQ was included inside the amps group, and all the EQ by the measure was made inside the P1 groups. That was the way.
You know what I find?
You can have a look here.
Between Dave and Max here is, I always find a good indication of a well-designed PA from the beginning is, you know, you're doing 2 or 3 Q notches on a given day, and they're usually between 100 hertz and 1K, right? So they're usually the kind of things that are hard to model in a modeling environment. You're not drastically changing the HF response, for example, on site is always a good sign. And I'm assuming that's the case here. You were doing a couple of points here and there. Oh, there's a little bit too much of this, and Dave, a little preference maybe overall, but you're not doing 10 or 12 or 15 EQ notches day in and day out to get the system response where you want.
I actually did very little. Once we got the RME, excuse me, once we got the RME unit in line, and that signal flow pattern, I actually did very, I didn't need to do, you know, very much at all.
Sure.
You know, but again, if I did do anything, it was just where I was. And I'd say to Max, if you go walking around, then you need to bring it back in, you know.
Sure, sure.
So, but that's quite standard. I appreciate that. If I do something on somebody's system, it is only where I am, you know.
Sure.
Yes, and the handover between Dave and me, we had at the beginning it's not like this, because I don't know Dave at the beginning of the tour, but at the end it was totally 100% confidence together. And when Dave gave me his opinion about the sound, I said, okay, I will have a quick walk, and after I come back to you, and after we change or not, it was a totally good link between us to improve the sound every day. And I said sometimes to Dave, be careful, it's just your part of the audience is like this, everywhere is better, and that can confirm by the measure before, because we had many microphones. Alors, to be honest, I don't deploy 24 microphones each day. I deploy almost 10 or 11 or 12, 16 maximum in O2, for example. But all this method can confirm or not a way. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. It's a nice drive rack that looks really great and compact. I see those DD4s or DD2s for opticore to MADI, a couple of L-ISA processors. That's great.
Yes, we can see here the two L-ISA processors and the P1 in front of us, and this RME sound card to distribute the AVB in the P1. Yes, inside the P1.
Great. That's great. Very cool.
Okay. Maybe we can have a look to some deployment. I don't know what. Maybe you have some question.
No, I mean, there was a couple of questions about rigging. You already answered that. We've seen some questions, obviously, on the amp racks. You answered that, which is great. I think we're doing actually a really good job, and there's a bunch of great questions coming in. Obviously, if you're watching us live today, please don't hesitate to send questions in, and we'll see if we can get those answered. If you're watching us on YouTube and we're not live, then join us next time live, and then you can ask questions. So thank you, guys. Operation Max, fire away.
Just a quick work around to mix with L-ISA. Just when we mix with L-ISA on big venue like this, we need to walk. At the end of the venue, we don't have the same panorama than in the front, and we need to find an average. That is the handler with your mixers, but we need to walk to confirm any step of the mix. That was the way on this tour, to confirm each step day per day.
Got it. And so, Max, what you're describing is obviously when you're up front, the PA feels really wide to you, right? So it's got a big panorama because geometry exists, right? And when you go further away, of course, that panorama gets narrower because of geometry. And so you still have all that separation, but you just don't have the bigness of the PA that it is down front. It's fairly epic. I would describe, in the first. From front of house forward, it can be epic in an arena where it just feels like the wall of sound coming at you at times, which is a kind of a fun artistic thing. But obviously, Dave, I'm imagining you have to be careful with that to not make it always feel like a wall of sound. Is that correct?
Well, as far as Mark's concerned, absolutely. It's yeah. I don't think there was a wall of sound. It's yeah. Well, I hope not. That wasn't the intention.
Sure. And as you go down front, you just got to be careful, because obviously you can almost at times over exaggerate how big something can be. But in the back of the venue, it's really cool to still have all that clarity and detail. You just don't have the spread of the panorama. It doesn't feel as big because the stage looks small, and that makes sense.
Absolutely. The effects actually are a big thing where that's concerned. So you're sat at the mix position, and you get your whatever, your reverb or a little pitch change, stereo pitch change, and you get it set nicely where you are at the desk. But you go down the front, and then you've got this. So as Max said, you've got to be aware of that and just create a bit of an average.
Sure.
But it's certainly something that you have to think about,
Got it. So regarding using of the different elements, so if you, for those of you watching or listening, if you've been to some of our other presentations, we obviously have a parameter of pan, right? So we can now, and Dave, this was the thing that sold you 3 years ago, was Dave Brooks explaining you can use the pan knob. But we have another parameter, which is distance, so you can kind of bring things forward and back in the mix. And Dave, did you find yourself using that dynamically? Did you bring things forward in the mix for a solo, for example, or was the layout more or less static throughout the show?
It was certain things were static, like the within a song, it was static, but different songs things did get moved back and moved wider or narrower, just to enhance that song, you know. Obviously, some songs were a bit more rockier, and you know, Max had a great suggestion for the opening number. He just said, "Why don't you just bring it all in?" I don't know if you remember this, Max, but he said, "Bring it all in, not right in to the centre, but bring it in, and then for the second song, move things out as you would generally for the general show, just to make this big, you know, wow." And it was a great suggestion, and it worked really well, you know. It was so yeah, absolutely, little things, just moving percussion forwards or back, or you know, just amazing tool, brilliant.
Did you find, like, obviously in arenas, were you using the room engine within the L-ISA processor much for the distance effect, or was it more or less off? And my follow-up to that is, when you went to theaters, did you find yourself wanting a bit of that because that's what your mix was built around, or yes or no?
I don't know, to be honest.
No,
I don't think so.
On some song we had the room engine just to recreate a space inside the deployment, sure. But almost all the show was at a small reverberation time. We don't use. We have. Dave used many reverbs inside the desk, and the way was to don't use too much the room engine. Yes.
We did try. We did try it a couple of times. Yeah, it was. Yeah, no. We said we just didn't, and you know, just ended up going, well, let's not use it. We're doing fine the way we are, you know.
No, it's interesting too. I also look at this picture of a screenshot of one of the songs from, it looks like Paris, and I'll tell you what is uncommon to see, and it's really great to see, is the use of width in an arena space, right? Because a lot of times you're fighting for clarity, and so you say, oh, I want to narrow everything up, but seeing the use of width to kind of maybe make certain musical elements stand back a little bit and let other ones focus forward is really neat to see. And see that back and forth between those elements is a good use of the tool. Now, you said, Dave, you got to mix a show or two or three or four on stereo. How was the transition from an L-ISA show to stereo? Did you have a new desk file, or was it a bit disappointing? Obviously, hopefully.
Well, to be perfectly fair. Well, you're not allowed to swear on this, are you? Are you allowed to swear? I was absolutely bricking myself. I don't know if that translates. Going to the first festival site. I think it was Bergen. Was it, Max?
Yes, right.
And I was just yeah. Yeah, I had a few sleepless nights before, but. To be perfectly honest, it was surprisingly good, and I think going through the controller, we still went through the controller, the L-ISA controller, and whatever the algorithms you've got going on to sort a left-right mix in that box. Just worked really good, really good.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
It was pleasantly a big surprise, actually. I still miss the L-ISA, obviously, but it wasn't a nightmare like I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
A few times where we did a left-right system, Max would put in a centre hang of Cara. I think it was Cara, wasn't it, Max?
Sometimes Cara, yes, and sometimes Gateway, depending of the.
And we just used where it would work with the width, the horizontal coverage, and I'll just have Mark's vocal and his guitar in that centre, which just helped hugely with a left-right mix, you know.
Sure, makes perfect sense.
Which was a superb, but again, you know, we had this times we had this centre hang that was a little lower than, you know, some productions would like, but it just worked superbly.
That's great. Well, it's really neat to see that experience, obviously, in growing. And I'd imagine your evolution of your soundscape in L-ISA changed throughout the tour. Where you started, maybe you were a bit more conservative, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you were a bit more dramatic and realized, oh, I can be more conservative in this. Did you find yourself?
It was that way, actually. Yeah, it was. So we went into band rehearsals for 3 weeks, and I had Sylvan. Sylvan and Sergey came in to band rehearsals, and the first day they were both there, and I just turned around to Sylvan. I said, "Right, you do what you want with that, because I've got to concentrate on what's going on in that room. Just do what you want with it." So Sylvan very kindly set up a picture of, you know, which was great. But that was in a little room with
little speakers.
Yeah. And then we went to the full production rehearsals, and yeah, you know, she started moving things about, and I was still learning what they was doing and trying to concentrate on what they was doing, as opposed to the L-ISA side of things. So when we went into production rehearsals, it sort of settled down, and it was sort of a 50-50 by the end of rehearsals. You know, I was still learning what was going on, and working on sounds, what they was doing, but I was getting my head around what was happening with the mix from the L-ISA side of things. And then when we actually hit the road doing live shows, again that changed, because you are then in a, you know, obviously different environments each night, and you know, even in, I think, Madison Square Gardens, I was still moving the odd thing about, you know.
Sure. And did you find yourself, you know, obviously from past tours with Mark, did you find yourself using different compressors or different EQs, or was there a change in your, you know, let's say your channel strip, or was that all fairly consistent between stereo and L-ISA?
Certain things didn't really change. No, I on Mark, his EQ was the same. It's a bit hard with the guitars, because we went from amps and speakers to whatever they're called, the artificial speaker things. I can't remember what they're called now.
Sure.
The Berman boxes. So guitar EQs were totally, you know, pretty much flat, really.
Sure, understood.
So certain things, EQs, I use less of, but in general, no, things still, you know, still a hang of speakers and an input, which, you know, I pretty much EQ things the same on the channel strip. I actually got I got in more into dynamic compression on the SD7, probably purely because I could hear things a lot better. You know, so I could work on them better.
Yeah, it's always one of those funny statements when I can remember, you know, doing a show with somebody, and we changed the PA and we went from something to something better, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can hear the tails of the reverb. Wow. Oh, I can actually change that setting now because I heard the difference, and that reminds me of that. Oh, I can isolate that instrument a lot better in the mix, and therefore I can realize that I can play with this setting that in the past it would have been lost in the blur of everything between 200 and 800 hertz, right? That is a big band.
Yeah, absolutely.
Max, I think, did we have one more topic to cover, or was this near the end?
No, this is the end. I just we are done with the presentation. I'm done.
Well, I think we had one or two quick questions in from everybody. There's a couple people asking, say, how quiet or loud the show was, and if it was any different from your stereo mix. Dave, did you have an SPL meter? Do you mix to that, or you just mix to your feelings? Is there a target you try to hit?
There's a target I try and stay away from. It's not, as I tried to express before, it's not. Mark has never been a. It's a word on plays, really. To me, there's different versions of loudness. There's, frequency, nasty, horrible things that are just sound loud and not actually dB-wise loud. But then there's something that can sound really full and rich and big and dynamic, which dB-wise readings is actually a lot louder, but it doesn't come across as loud. So Mark's always been, or tries to be that dynamic sort of rich sound. So we've been running, I think, probably an average about 96, about 96, which is probably nice, 2 or 3 dB louder than what it has been on a left-right system.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, 96 is a really nice show volume. If most shows could be in that volume, I would be happy. And I think it's nice to see it not just be a loudness war of my show's louder than the next one. So that's but you guys had a lot of dynamic range. Max, did you ever measure the dynamic swing through the show, like the quietest points to the loudest?
The SPL average was 95 dBs during the show, and the maximum SPL was 102 dBs, 103 dBs, max peak. But it's more a jazz, an acoustical show, it was not a rock band on stage. The way was to recreate an ambient inside L-ISA, quite ambient, like when you are on your sofa. It was inside a small jazz band, inside a small jazz venue, very intimist, intimistic venue. That was the way to recreate an intimistic show inside a big venue.
Got it. And I have a question for both of you. And Max, I'll have you go first. I found a huge challenge with L-ISA shows is all of my test tracks are stereo. So how do you listen to Jennifer Warnes or Steely Dan, or what was your technique? What did you do every day to check the system, Max?
For me, the best way is to listen the virtual sound check, because if we listen some CDs, sometimes you cut some frequencies, and after you need these frequencies to mix. And the way was to listen all the time the virtual sound check. Yeah.
And Dave, same thing, I'm assuming.
Well, it's the only way you can really do it, because you've got this multi-zone that you just can't do. Yeah, it was a bit of a head scratch to start with, and I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of listening to the recordings in full. So I would generally come to the desk, and after Max had finished, and I would actually just listen to the bass drum snare hi-hat with the bass guitar. And from that, I'd go one way or the other, you know. Bit of an odd approach to many people, I would imagine, but yeah, it's just the way. And then, you know, sometimes I bring the piano in and, you know, check the mids that way, and you know, just different, as opposed to just putting everything on and, you know, having some huge arena going back down to the mics and trying to recreate it in another arena or theatre. Yeah, it didn't make sense to me, that, but yeah, so I just use certain tracks and we'd go from there.
Well, and I found that to be the most useful, even in stereo at times, is ultimately it doesn't matter how Steely Dan sounds, it's how my artist today sounds, right? Like, I used to do something, Dave, and I'll tell you this, is I used to do to my front of house engineer on an artist that shall remain nameless, is I measured the sound system at mix through the vocal input. So I actually pulled the vocal input out of the Midas back in the day and plugged my pink noise inject. And what I was checking was, no matter what the sound system did, I can tell you that a good front house engineer will make that vocal sound the same every single day at his or her position. Sure. And so, you know, if I didn't do the work on the system EQ, you as a mixer would have done it on the channel strip and found the sound that we need to hit, you know, and so it's like, it's just a great reference and a great way to say, listen, at the end of the day, Jennifer Warnes or Steely Dan or Michael Jackson or whatever you play sounds great, but it's the vocal channel that's critical, it's that guitar channel that's critical, and might as well just use that. I've got one last question. I'm going to go to Max first on this. It's kind of a big one. I hope I don't put you on the spot too much. Max, you're slightly younger than me. I believe you've turned 19. Is that it? Is that it? You're 20 now?
1992.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Max, pretty soon I'll be able to buy you a beer here in the United States. I'm excited for that. But in your career, Max, what is the most, let's say, influential or important or revolutionary technology change you've seen in your career? What's something that stands out to you as like, wow, when that came out, it just really changed things?
I think for me is Soundvision, because without this software we cannot predict nothing, and the only way for me to deploy systems perfectly and to deploy L-ISA perfectly, that is the starting point for me is Soundvision. Yes.
That's cool. Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, I do remember, and Dave, I know you remember the way you hung a PA was putting your fist between the boxes, and you needed 2 knuckles or 1 knuckle of splay. And you probably also remember when we used to chain with 3 links or 2 links or 4 links of chain to get the. Those days were fun. And when you realize you made a mistake after you flew 60 enclosures.
You quiet.
Yeah, I'll fix it tomorrow, not today. Yeah. Dave, you've obviously done a few more shows than Max. We'll just leave it at that. You've seen a few innovations and big changes. Is there something to you that stands out that changed the way you do your job, you know, over the course of your career?
Well, there's several, I guess, but I mean, when I started, there was. We made it up, basically. You know, it was like putting the fist between cabinet. It was just, you know, making it up. Now, fortunately, we've got people like Max who go to school and learn these things, and which has been great for the industry. You know, people who actually know the physics and the reasons why, as opposed to making it up and playing it by ear, you know. So that's one great innovation, I think, for us. Another one, yeah, I mean, digital, the whole digital side of things didn't start off too good, I don't think. Which, yeah, I think what was the first units that came with the sample rate was 16?
Yeah, you know,
was it? Around those 1 bit, 16. Yeah. And it'd be like, oh, you use this, you got it, it's digital, it's yeah, but it doesn't sound good. Yeah, but there's no hiss, you know. Anyway, but fortunately, the whole digital package is now come to fruition, and digital desks, and that's a great leap in faith. Line array systems, that was another great innovation, obviously. But I'm not just saying this because we're doing this today. The biggest thing for me has been this L-ISA system. It was just mind blowing. It was amazing. It really was amazing.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, Dave. I'm not obviously poking you to say something like that, but I feel the same way. Like each other innovation we've had, digital consoles are incredible. What you can mix now in the programming, the automation, which is good. In the workflow, and all those things are amazing. When they work, and now they do, right? I mean, I think we've all been lucky enough, and I think the same thing. Even multi-channel mixing in live environments has kind of existed for a while, but L-ISA is just really that package that puts it all together. And when I see 10,000 people in an arena go, something's different. They don't know what it is. They don't need to know why it is. They don't need to know the physics of it. They don't need to know Soundvision did the design. They just know something's different, and they enjoy the show, and they enjoy the show better. And maybe I'll finish up with this and ask you guys one more question. For me, when I've heard a show with L-ISA in arena, if I closed my eyes, I would never have guessed I was in the O2 or in Madison Square Garden. I would have thought for sure we were in a 500 or 700 person cabaret or jazz club or theater, and it's a much more intimate experience, which is what I want to spend my money on, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree, and I think that's possibly my comment before about the band noticing the crowd's reaction, different reaction on this last tour compared to others. The crowd are actually, without knowing it, appreciating the difference, which is great. They are the ones that are paying their hard-earned money to be entertained, and that was the main reason for going down the whole route of L-ISA. Was they hear what we hear at the desk, which was superb.
That's great, Dave. I'm so glad that you got to do this. The Mark Knopfler is almost the ideal choice of musicians. I mean, there's a handful out there you can think of, and that's definitely on the list. And I want to tell you, I've heard from more of my friends, my coworkers, my clients out there who went to the show and were just utterly blown away. I mean, some of the most influential names in our industry have been to that show last year, and all of them texted and called the next day, and said the same thing, which is, I've never heard a better sounding show in my entire life. And obviously, Max, the pairing of a great front of house engineer and a great systems engineer together, I think when you find that pairing, it's really, really, really impressive. So thank you both for an amazing tour. I'm really looking forward to all of us getting to go do shows again. And hopefully Mark Knopfler will be ready to go back on tour when we're ready to go back out again. And everyone who hasn't had a chance to see this show last year will get a chance to see it soon.
So, yeah. And I've got to take my hat off to Max, because he and Ulf just made a great tour. Basically, it was a whole team effort. It's not just one person, two people. It was a whole team effort. Everybody. It was a lot of little clinks, and fortunately, it all just sort of married together, which was good.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys very much, Dave. Thanks for taking the time. It's almost supper time there, I think. So there you go. We got some tea. We're ready to go. Maxime, I expect to see a picture on social media tonight with a glass of rosé.
Yeah.
He's going to get it for us. That's good. And because I'm not allowed to travel to France, please have some fresh baguette for me and cheese. And I look forward to seeing all of you in person again when we get to the other side. Everyone who's watching us live, thank you very much. The rest of you on YouTube, don't hesitate to click on the subscribe button and get updates from L-Acoustics. We're doing webinars all the time, and the schedule for next week should be out shortly. Thank you guys very much. We'll have a great rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Max.
Thanks everyone.